28th of August 1984, a man named Josef had just completed the basement which he was building in his family home in Amstetten, Austria. Now the only thing left to complete this basement was a door, and he could not carry this door alone. So he called out to his daughter, Elisabeth, come help me carry the door. And then his daughter came around to help him move this door from the house to the basement. They went down a flight of stairs, and when they had gotten to the basement, he told his daughter to hold up the door so that he could seal the door. Now when they were done sealing this door, he held his daughter and put an ether-soaked towel over her nose. His daughter fell unconscious, and he threw her into the cellar and locked her up. That would be her home for the next 24 years, where she would be held captive, warded by her father, assaulted, and forced to bear 7 children for her father. This is the sad case of Elisabeth Fritzl and her father, Josef Fritzl. Let's get right into the story. Hi Sleuthians, and welcome to Sleuthville. My name is Nedi and I'm your host on this channel. As always, if this is the first time stopping by this channel, please don't make it your last by clicking on that subscribe button. If you are a true crime enthusiast, then this is the spot for you. Also make sure to click on the like button and drop your comments in the comment section as well. Before we proceed with this video, I would like to give a disclaimer that today's episode has mentions of the R word and of incest and of assault, and if these are words that will trigger you, if these are things that will trigger you, then please be informed. Now let's get right into the story. When you think of a parent, the words that come to mind are love, care, protection, guardianship. But I'm sure if you asked Elisabeth Fritzl what words she would associate with parenting, she would say hate, anger, helplessness, disgust, and betrayal. And this is because of the ordeal and the things that she went through in the hands of her parents, and that is basically what we're going to be discussing in today's episode. Josef Fritzl was born on the 9th of April 1935 to Josef Sr. and Maria Fritzl. Now, he was raised by his single mother, and it was said that his father was a severe alcoholic, and he abandoned Joseph and his mother when Joseph was just 4 years old. Joseph was left to be raised by his mother, and when Joseph turned 21 years, he met a lady called Rosemary, and she was 17 years old, and the both of them fell so deep in love and decided to tie the knots. So Josef Fritzl got married to Rosemary, and they started a family together. Joseph then went ahead to complete his education at a technical college where he got a qualification as an electrical engineer, and then he went ahead to secure a job at Vuelstapin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he worked at Vuelstapin from 1969 to 1971, after which he resigned and then became a salesman. Joseph and his wife Rosemary went ahead to give birth to 7 children, 3 sons and 4 daughters, one of which was named Elisabeth. In 1967, Joseph was said to have broken into the house of a nurse, and he held a weapon to her neck and was said to have warded this nurse. Now, the nurse reported him to the authorities, and he was found guilty of this crime and was sentenced to an 18-month sentence. However, he was said to have served only 12 months out of the 18 months sentence, and he was released. Now, in Austria, I believe that they have a law that states that after 15 years of your crime, your criminal record would be, cleared and wiped off. And after 15 years, Joseph's criminal record was wiped off, which meant that this particular crime of R-word that he did was wiped off his record. Now, Elisabeth, who is the daughter that we're going to be paying attention to today, was born into the Fritzl family on the 6th of April 1966. And when she turned 11 years old, it was said that her father began assaulting her from that tender age. Elisabeth was said to have grown into a notorious child. She was that child that would not listen to anything that her parents were telling her. If they were telling her to go left, she would go right. If they were asking her to go right, she would definitely go left. She was notorious. And when she had completed her compulsory education at the age of 15 years, she went ahead to start a course to become a waitress. But it was said that in January of 1983, Elisabeth ran away from the family, ran away from the house with a friend to go live in Vienna. Her parents reported to the police, and within 3 weeks she was found and she was brought back to the family house. I mean, one could only guess the reason why she ran away from home. Like, it's not something that is hard to believe. Someone that was already being rewarded by her father since she was 11 years old, I'm sure she had gotten enough of it and decided that she could no longer take any more of that, and she decided to run away from home. However, like I said, she was found and she was brought back to the family house, and she went ahead to complete her course in being a waitress. This story begins on the 28th of August 1984, just after Elisabeth turned 18 years old. Her father had been building a basement in the house, and he was building this basement or cellar with the intention that he was going to use that basement to make drawings for construction companies and the likes of that, because like I said, he was an engineer. So he told his family that that was the reason why he was building this basement. And when he was almost done building this basement, the only thing left for him to do was to fix the door to the basement. But he claimed that he could not carry this door by himself. So he called on his daughter Elisabeth to come help him fix the door. Elisabeth came along to help him carry the door, and she held the door for him to seal the door. But when her father was done sealing this door, he took a towel which he had already soaked in ether, and he covered her nose with this towel, and this made her to immediately become unconscious. Now, when Elisabeth became unconscious, her father threw her into the basement and locked her in that basement, and she would live in that basement for the next 24 years of her life. When Elisabeth got missing, her mother, Rosemary, went ahead to file a missing persons report or a missing persons case for Elisabeth. And after several investigations were done, her father presented a letter to the police, and the content of the letter stated that she had run away from the house and that she had gone on to live with her friends, and that her parents should not bother looking for her or reporting the case to the police or making the police come look for her, because if they tried doing that, she was going to run away from the country. And then, as usual, someone that had run away from the house before, people believed that, or her parents and people around believed that it was probably a case of her running away from the family house again, as she used to do in the past. So they did not proceed further looking for Elisabeth, thinking that she willingly left on her own, and also seeing that she was of legal age. I mean, she had already turned 18. What Rosemary's mother and the police did not know was that Josef, her father, had forced Rosemary into writing this letter. He had forced her to write this letter stating that she was tired of living with her family and that she had run away, not knowing that she was just right below them in the basement of the same house. Joseph would go to the basement 3 times a week with food and with drinks and with certain basic things that Elisabeth would need. And when he goes to the basement, he would reward her several times, and he would assault her and beat her up. And this continued for years and years and years. And in the process of this happening, Elisabeth was said to have given birth to 6 children for her father, Joseph, one of which died. Now, when Elisabeth started bearing children, she had her first 3 children, and when her father Joseph noticed that the space of the basement of the cellar could no longer contain Elisabeth and her children, he decided that the next set of children that she was going to give birth to, he was going to find a way to raise them upstairs with the rest of the family. So when Elisabeth was pregnant with her 4th child and she gave birth to that child, her father took the child and went upstairs and pretended to keep the child in front of their house with a letter which he had forced Elisabeth to write, stating that she could not take care of the child which she had born, and so she was bringing the child back for her parents to help raise these children, or raise this child. And he did that for the 4th, 5th and 6th child that Elisabeth bore for him. So this means that 3 children were being raised downstairs in the basement by Elisabeth, and then the remaining 3 children were being raised upstairs by Elisabeth's father and her mother. Elisabeth's father Joseph and her mother Rosemary went ahead to request to adopt these children which Elisabeth had born. And because Joseph's criminal record of R word in the past had been cleared, the government could not stop him from raising these children. They did not even know about his previous record, so they went ahead to approve for him to be the foster parents, or for them to be the foster parents of Elisabeth's children. Elisabeth, on the other hand, was raising the remaining 3 children downstairs, and she taught them how to read and write and how to have basic communication. Now let's note that this basement was a place that was dark and gloomy and was devoid of sunlight, devoid of anything. They were not having human interactions aside from themselves and from the interactions that she was having with her father. I don't know how cruel that man could have been to have done something like that to his own child, to his own daughter. Now I'm sure you're wondering why neither Elisabeth nor her 3 children ever tried to escape. Well, her father kept threatening her that if they ever tried it, that he was going to end their lives, and he even went as far as telling them that the door to the basement was electrocuted, and so if they even tried to touch the door, they were going to be electrocuted to death. For 24 years, Joseph lied to his wife and his family upstairs that every time he went to the basement downstairs, that he was going to draw plans for machines which he sold to manufacturing firms. Little did they know that that was just a blatant lie that Joseph was telling to cover up his tracks. On the 19th of April 2008, Elisabeth's eldest daughter, Kirsten, fell really ill. She was seriously ill, and Elisabeth had begged her father, Joseph, to take her daughter to the hospital to receive proper care because she was scared that her daughter was going to die. And seeing that this was a very, very critical case, Joseph agreed to take his daughter and also his granddaughter. I mean, Elisabeth is his daughter, Kirsten is also his daughter, and in the same light, his granddaughter. Wow. Anyways, he decided to carry his daughter, Kirsten, and Elisabeth to the hospital. After so much pleading and pleading and pleading, and when they got to the hospital, it was said that his daughter Kirsten had chronic kidney failure and she fell unconscious for a while, and she actually needed proper treatment and proper medical attention and care. So after this encounter in the hospital, Joseph and Elisabeth went back home, and he went back to locking her up in the basement. And I'm wondering how no one saw them, or how his wife or the siblings, nobody was able to see them. But anyways, Joseph took Elisabeth back to the basement and locked her up as usual, and he went back to the hospital. And when they asked about the whereabouts of the mother, he mentioned that she just brought the daughter there and wrote a letter to abandon, that she could not take care of her again, and that she was abandoning her for her parents. But something seemed very, very suspicious about the statements that he gave. When Joseph sent Elisabeth back to the basement. He actually even forced her to write a letter about the whole abandoning her child and her not being able to take care of her sick child and all of that. And when Joseph presented this letter to the police, coupled with his statements, they felt that something fishy was going on. Like, the story was not adding up, his statements was not adding up. And so they decided that they were going to start an investigation into this case. Now, a week later, Elisabeth begged her father again so that she could be able to go to the hospital to see her daughter and to know how her daughter was faring. And Joseph agreed to her pleas and brought her upstairs again, and they went to the hospital together. Now, when they were in the hospital together, a particular doctor noticed them and immediately alerted the police. And then the police came, and on interrogating them, they found out that she was Elisabeth. So they arrested both her and her father and took them to the station for questioning. Joseph also went ahead to release Elisabeth's two sons from the basement to come upstairs. And when the police started questioning Elisabeth, she refused to give any statement. She refused to talk to the police, and she refused to provide the police with any details on the things that had happened in her life for the past 24 years. Now, the police had to, probe her further, ask her questions further, just to make her feel comfortable. And they informed her that she was never going to see her father again. And when she heard that she would never set her eyes on her father again, she felt more comfortable to talk to the police. And so she went ahead and narrated every single thing that happened since she was held captive by her father when she turned 18 until now, 24 years after. Anybody that hears that story would think that it was a very bizarre story. Like, what are you talking about? How do you mean your father locked you up for 24 years and you had 7 children for him? It's not possible. However, when the police went ahead to conduct DNA tests for 6 of her children, they actually discovered that the father of those children was Elisabeth's father, Joseph, which meant that the father of the children was their grandfather. The DNA tests confirmed that the children were birthed incestuously. Joseph was then immediately arrested, and his trial started on the 16th of March 2009. Joseph pleaded guilty of all charges except the charge of murder. Now, he was being charged for negligent murder because of the death of his 7th child. That was the baby that Elisabeth bore that died from certain complications. The trial went on for a couple of days, and on the 19th of March 2009, Josef Fritzl was sentenced to life imprisonment, and that marks the end of the 24 years of captivity of Elisabeth and her 3 children. Now, one would want to think that justice had been served, but was justice truly served? Because I can only imagine the amount of trauma and the amount of psychological, trauma that Elisabeth and her children had to go through. And let's not even make any mistake, these children were actually traumatized, and this trauma was said to have been manifested in different aspects of their life. For the children that grew up downstairs in the basement, they had to face the trauma of not knowing what was going on in the outside world, not knowing how to relate with people, seeing all the things that their father was doing to their mother, Elisabeth, the assault and all of that he was doing to her in front of them. And it was even said that one of her sons grew taller than the basement, and because he was taller than the height of the basement, he had to crouch, he had to hunch rather, to move around to the house in the basement, and this affected the way he walked. And for the children that grew up upstairs, they were said to have faced the trauma of being lied to all their lives, that their mother actually abandoned them when she in fact did not abandon them but was held captive by their father/grandfather. And one would just begin to wonder that how does these things happen? How do these things happen in this life? Like, it's just so crazy. It's just so crazy. On this channel, we've covered the case of a Syrian man who was held captive for 24 years in the basement of his neighbor. But you can even understand that, okay, maybe that is his neighbor, the person is in no way related to this man. But for your own father, the person that bore you, the person that brought you into this world, into this life, to be the one that was holding you captive in the basement for that long and forcing you to have 7 children for him, it's beyond me. I cannot understand how people are able to do that to other people, not to talk of their offspring. It's a really, really sad situation. Elisabeth, her children and her mother were said to have been moved into a clinic to receive, medical attention and psychological treatment as well, and to assist them with reintegrating into the society. And after this treatment, they were said to have moved to a country home where they now live. And they were also offered new identities by the government. However, we don't know if they actually took up these new identities or not. And yeah, that is it. So far, people have said recently that she's currently doing well and that her children are also doing great as well. So yeah, that's it. We've come to the end of this story. I want us to discuss in the comment section, do you think that the judgment that was given to Josef Fritzl was enough for the time that he had taken out of his daughter's life, for the pain that he had caused her, for all the things that he had put her through? Do you think that life imprisonment was enough punishment for that crime? Let's discuss this in the comment section. So guys, we've come to the end of this story. If you have watched this video up until this point, I feel like it's only befitting that you give this video a thumbs up, drop your comments in the comment section, and subscribe to this channel as well. And stay glued because we have so much more coming your way. I like to say stay safe and stay informed. And until my next video, bye.